Well, under the premise that, once a provider really understands what their obligations are when they decide to play in the third-party reimbursement or insurance company sandbox, whether it's a participating provider or not, many are making the choice to move to, I hate to mislabel it, but a cash model. And a cash model is mislabeled only because it doesn't really recognize the reason that the services are paid cash by the patient, and the reason is because they're not covered. And that would include wellness care, types of services that carriers would consider experimental, investigational, and whatnot, and where the patient, coverage or not, that insurance company has no obligation to pay for those services, and therefore that obligation falls to the patient. Now, the benefit of doing that is consider that you don't need an EMR system, you don't need billing and collection staff, you don't have to store EOBs for 7 years, you don't have to buy CMS 1500 forms, you don't have to buy stamps or pay clearinghouses to submit those forms. So all of those overhead expenses are gone. My dad's practice way back in the day, he had Burl, and she ran the front desk and made notations on ledger cards. That was it. And that's your administrative overhead expense because you have no billing. All the services are either prepaid or paid at the time of service, so you don't even have patient billing. So there's that significant factor. You have absolutely no post-payment risk, so you don't need attorneys to represent you in post-payment cases, compliance consultants, things of that nature, experts, and all the substantial expenses there. And then finally, you have to consider that when you're no longer engaging in what HIPAA calls covered transactions, which is electronic benefits verification, claims, payments, and EOBs, you're not a covered entity under HIPAA. So while most people and most providers haven't really fully conformed to their obligations under HIPAA relative to risk analysis, development of appropriate policies and procedures, maintenance, training, auditing, breach analysis, and things of that nature, all of those obligations go away. And all of the potential penalties for not doing it as well as you should have, which, those penalties, in most cases are going to run at $50,000 per incident. So, there's a substantial hammer behind HIPAA for non-compliance, and most people are just running the risk that they're not going to get caught. So that goes away. Finally, when you consider Medicare, you can treat Medicare patients. You just have to recognize that Medicare doesn't believe that anything a chiropractor does is ever medically necessary due to documentation deficiencies or the fact that Medicare patients are pretty much one and done. PRN, Aunt Gladys can only bring me on the second Tuesday of the month, whatever the reason is. It's almost impossible to get that kind of care covered, and even if you could, even if you had a Medicare patient that had an acute injury that needed a course of care, the documentation requirements are so severe that it's not profitable. You cannot make money when you have to comply with all of Medicare's documentation rules, submit the claim, pay people to post the payments, chase after it, and then bear the post-payment risk. If you're successful at that, you're going to get audited, and it's going to be a costly process regardless. So that cash practice includes the transition of Medicare patients into a wellness or palliative care model, and then you avoid all that risk as well.